Hello, everyone, and welcome to the sustainability event hosted by Plug and Play. We're here on the topic of the resilience of sustainability and the problem of waste. My name is Dene Robert, and I'm a ventures analyst at Plug and Play. About 6 months ago, we were still talking about reuse and circular economy. However, we're now 4 months into the pandemic, and reuse is no longer possible. It's even a big issue as this was the image of and the big step towards sustainability. Not only that, we've been increasing single-use plastics and single-use product, especially with PPEs, personal protective equipment, with gloves, masks, facial shields, and even medical waste. This is an issue not only for corporations, which had sustainable goals, but also for individuals who were really trying to promote and try to be more sustainable. So today, I would like to welcome 3 amazing startups, Ubuntu, Litterati, and Rheaply. I would like the audience to be very engaged. There is a Q&A box at the bottom of the screen. Feel free to ask any questions you have on the topic or specific to any startups. We'll try to answer all the questions live, but also online. We'll try to type all the answer. So I would like to start with Peter. Peter is co-founder and CEO of Ubuntu. Ubuntu is a sustainable platform which promotes startups in the space. Not only that, Ubuntu also sends daily news, which I highly recommend on sustainability. Peter, welcome. If you want to introduce yourself and share your screen.
Wonderful. And thanks for having me. It's a pleasure being here. Thanks for the great introduction, Danae. And let me share my screen. I'll talk a little bit about myself actually during the presentation. And please let me know if you can see my screen. Then I can.
Perfect. Thank you.
Wonderful. And I'll talk a little bit also about myself because it's hard to talk about Ubuntu without introducing myself. I'd say that first of all, I'm a typical world citizen. I'm originally from Belgium, living in Atlanta, but I lived in Africa, lived in Southeast Asia for 8 years, in Atlanta right now, mostly, with Coca-Cola. So I was part of Coca-Cola for close to 20 years, believe it or not. Nowadays being in Atlanta, I live close to the Smoky Mountains, which is pristine and beautiful. But in Manila, I used to live to another Smoky Mountains. And out on the outskirts of Manila, the Smoky Mountains is a dump site, a gigantic dump site on which hundreds of families live and work, right? Not just the parents work on the dump site, but including the children oftentimes. And so as I was with Coca-Cola, and I was global head of digital. I was CMO for Asia Pacific at Coca-Cola. So I was at the cutting edge of technology and digital and marketing and what have you not. At the same time, in my personal life, I was also confronted with the impact that environmental issues have on livelihoods. Right? So I know the plastic pollution issue, not so much from whales and turtles. I do know it from people. And the effect it can have on people directly. And so at a certain point in time, I decided to pursue a calling instead of a career, or maybe I should say a calling and a career at the same time, because the reason why we did this, and I talk about we because I co-founded this with an ex-colleague of mine, Venkatesh Kini. We founded this not just because of ideology, but also because of opportunity. And I think that's the potential tipping point of sustainability. First, a little bit about the name. The name comes from the southern parts of Africa. Ubuntu has been out there for a long time, made popular by Nelson Mandela, Desmond Tutu. It's unity of humanity. I am who I am because of who we all are together. And this is pretty much how we look at Ubuntu in today's world also. So the problem we wanted to solve is a typical problem for large corporations, large organizations in general. Back in the days, Coca-Cola said, there's the golden triangle. So if large corporations work with governments and large NGOs, there's nothing that can stop them. The problem was that this is very much a top-down approach that didn't work because you're not really connecting to entrepreneurs and local influencers and academics and what have you not. So you're leaving out a large part of the ecosystem. And on the other hand, we've seen a groundswell of innovators and entrepreneurs. We call them ecopreneurs around the world, having access to new technology, new materials, new business models, and what have you not, right? So there's the fourth industrial revolution has given access to new technologies to many more people. And before that would only be accessible for big companies. Now it is accessible to thousands and hundreds of thousands of entrepreneurs. So the top didn't reach the bottom and the bottom didn't reach the top. And this is very much a similar situation as Uber or Airbnb before they existed, right? So there's the information asymmetry and collaboration asymmetry that we're trying to solve. So that's why the title of my presentation is Uberizing Environmental Action. So what we really, really want to do is making sure that we gather all the key players around specific issues in society and the environment. So let me show you what Ubuntu is about in live. We started the company about 2 years and a half ago. And then we launched the platform in March of last year. So when you go on the platform, what you'll see is, activity feed. So we have some new people coming on board, new members. We hit 3,500 members yesterday, knowing that all of these members are professionals. So it's a business-to-business platform. So they're professionals in their field of solving the issue of plastic pollution. We extended also to sustainable food and sustainable fashion because of the requests we've been getting. We highlight, in this case, we highlight a collaboration we have with UNEP, United Nations Environmental Program, with Ghent University and Vito. And then we show solutions and news and knowledge, not just solutions. And the reason why is that if you're interested in a certain topic, it's actually very important also to build some capabilities. So if you're interested in, for example, that there's a bio-based material called PHA, and if in a company, if you're working in a company, you say, well, I want to learn a little bit more about PHA, you just type in PHA, and then on the platform, you see all kinds of solutions and innovators working on PHA. You see news about PHA, and we have more than 5,000 news articles now over the last 5 years. We curate those every day. And also knowledge articles. And then these can be academic articles, podcasts, blogs, what have you. And then you say, well, I'm interested in knowing a little bit about, who RWDC is, and you see the whole profile, right? So we've modeled this a little bit behind Airbnb. We want to make sure that we have a sexy appeal, even though we're talking about waste, which is not very sexy in general. We did want to talk about waste in a way that is really appealing. So you see the details, their headquarters, you can follow the company, you can contact them directly. You also see the stage of development, very important. Are they really fully in market, or in this case, they're still in development? We also added, because we have a pretty large community of specialists right now, we added a collaboration kind of forum where people ask questions and other people chip in, or we chip in with answers. So for example, there's a couple of days ago, or June 10, this person said I have a large number of banana wastes, and anyone willing to buy banana fiber, right? And then basically what you just do, what you can do is, well, someone has an issue with banana, they have a large pile of banana waste. And then we said, well, maybe we can help this person. We just type in banana and we say, okay, who's working on banana and converting banana waste into useful products? So for example, we see the University of New Southwest in Australia, I think that is working on plastics from banana waste. Banana Tex is a company that creates textiles and fibers from banana waste and so on. So we're able to connect those people then, sometimes for small issues they have, sometimes for big issues, right? And this is really the purpose of Ubuntu as we go on board. So you can easily subscribe on ubuntu.com and see what we're about. Let me go back to the presentation. Here you go. So a little bit about the numbers. So we have visibility to more than 2,500 solutions, specifically on these topics of plastic pollution, fashion, and food. We think, that there's 5,000 plus created pieces of content, 3,500 plus members. We have a reach also of 1 million, over 1 million with social media. We've been working very hard on it. And then we've been very lucky that since we launched the platform, we've been getting some requests from a lot of companies and organizations like UNEP and Coke and Clorox and a lot of universities, Converse, for specific customized projects, right? So, and that is helping us because, a platform is hard to get off the ground financially also, and doing specific services for specific companies and organizations is helping us also being financially sustainable. So we have a core team of mostly Atlanta-based people, but they're very international. So I think we have almost as many nationalities as people. But the idea is that we don't want to build internal capabilities as much as tapping into the best capabilities and expertise outside of Ubuntu, because the expertise outside of Ubuntu is always going to be exponentially larger than the one inside of Ubuntu. So we work with what we call the Ubuntu Collective. These are friends, let's say, of Ubuntu and supporters of Ubuntu that happen to be academicians or experts or institutions. So we work a lot with universities of Ghent, Amsterdam, Arizona State University, Illinois, and what have you not. And for any project that we do, we want to tap into the best in the world, right? So we're not the kind of company that said, okay, we can handle everything. We actually are very, in a way, humble and say, well, we'll look for the best experts and the best solutions and the best knowledge on this, right? So this is 30,000 feet overview of Ubuntu. And thank you for your attention and looking forward to your questions. Here you go.
Thank you so much, Peter. I really appreciate it. It's awesome. And I highly recommend the daily news. Peter, if you want to keep your camera on for just a little bit, because we have some questions. One of which Bridget is saying, is asking, you've got a waste picker campaign on your website. Can you speak to that current problem?
Yeah, there's on the website, I don't know which one it is exactly you're referring to, but if it's the UNEP project, so United Nations and together with the University of Ghent came to us and say, well, we're looking to map out all the solutions to marine plastics recovery. So plastics recovery in oceans and rivers. And what we do basically is, because we've been doing this for 2.5 years already, is we do a lot of research. We're mapping out all the solutions in the world. And then you have a team of experts, and we have actually what we call the greenhouse that I didn't show today, but we didn't have the time. We have a greenhouse that is a private collaboration space where experts from UNEP, University of Ghent, an organization called VITO, which is a sustainable technology organization, experts rating those solutions, right? So it's pretty much like what you would do with the deal flow. You start with, let's say, 50 solutions. You go to the next phase, we're interested, not interested, then we actually have expert ratings, and we come to the top 5 to collaborate with. In some cases, we also do deal flow to invest in, right? So this is a typical project that we've been undertaking with them.
That's awesome. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for answering these questions and for the time. This is a great way to also follow with Jeff. Jeff is co-founder and CEO of Litterati. He promotes waste picking in a safe way as well. Jeff, if you want to turn on your camera and introduce yourself, as well as share your screen.
Hello, Danae. Hello, everybody.
Welcome. Thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you for having me. So my name is Jeff Kirschner, and I'm the founder and CEO of Litterati. And we are a global litter intelligence platform, and we're powered by people. The way it works is very simple. It starts with a photograph. We've built an iOS and Android application that anybody can download and instantly join this ever-growing community and become part of the solution. And we like to say it's simple yet sophisticated. So the simplicity of taking a photograph, what we can do is we understand who took a picture of what, where, and when. So that allows us to start identifying what are all of the objects and materials and brands that are littering our streets and our sidewalks and our beaches, our ocean. We're able to map every single item, and we're able to understand when those items are found. And so what we've done recently is start to integrate machine learning models into the application so that we can instantly identify what are the objects, materials, and brands. So maybe we're looking at very tiny sachets that the brand isn't immediately clear, or sometimes there's things that are a bit more recognizable, and we can understand those objects and materials, even down to—
I can't see your screen. I guess you're sharing a presentation?
I am.
Okay.
And it's not— let's try that again.
I see your—
Yeah, I wasn't sure. Thank you.
How about now?
Yeah, perfect.
Yes, we see it now. Thanks, Peter.
Thank you.
One of the greatest things about technology is that oftentimes it doesn't work the way you think it would work. And I think when you're trying to battle some of these big complex problems, that happens more often than not. So forgive me, let me start over. My name is Jeff Kirschner, and I'm the founder and CEO at Litterati. And we are a global litter intelligence platform. And it's a platform that's powered by people. The way it works is very simple. We start with a photograph, an iOS, Android application that anybody can download and instantly join this community and become part of the solution. And what that photograph allows us to do is understand who picked up what, where, and when. And that data serves as the foundation of the information that we're collecting. We're able to understand what are the objects, materials, and brands, where is everything found, when are these items being picked up. And we've recently started to integrate machine learning models, artificial intelligence that identifies this object, material, and brand so that the minute the individual in the community snaps a photograph, we can see things like that's a plastic sachet that might be unbranded, or more recognizable items, or even down to a cigarette butt. We take that information and we feed it into a database and start to perform certain analytics on top of it. And this is where the sophistication comes in, because once you take a crowdsourced group of photographs and begin to put predictive intelligence on top of it, it really allows you to start to take action. And at the end of the day, that's what we're all about. While the data is important and the technology is critical, it's really about what changes in the system can we see. So who uses our service? Right now it's cities brands, schools, and NGOs. They all subscribe to the platform, really to engage their own communities and access the data. And this is what it's all about. It's about this community-generated data, which allows us to really do three things to reach our mission of eradicating litter and identifying the world's waste. We call them the 3 Ps. It's about changing policy, influencing packaging, and inspiring personal responsibility. So let me give you a couple of examples of these changes that have occurred as a result of the community. The first one was arguably the one that inspired me the most because it happened because of a bunch of 5th graders. So in Modesto, California, a group of 5th graders came together and they used Litterati to pick up 1,247 pieces of litter just on their schoolyard. And they learned from the data that the most common type of litter were the plastic wrappers from the straws in the cafeteria. So these students went to their principal and just said, why are we even buying straws? And they stopped. And individually, they learned that they could make a difference, but together, that's really where they created an impact. And that is just a simple yet effective change that happened. Really was one of the first stories of impact we ever saw. And it, for us, was really a light bulb moment that demonstrated the power of the data. This happened just this last week. So in the Netherlands, the Dutch Litterati community started noticing these plastic wrappers made from a company called Pervasco. The brand is Antiflu. And they picked up tens of thousands of these Antiflu plastic wrappers. They took the data to the company, and the CEO, to his credit, said, all right, I'm going to change the supply chain. And just this week, the paper Antiflu model has now hit store shelves. And you can only imagine the excitement that that has generated in Holland, because these people have seen that the action they took together has actually led to a massive difference that is going to protect the Dutch grounds going forward. That same community started looking at connector balls, which is a golf ball sized plastic firework. And you can imagine when these things explode, plastic fragments end up all over the ground. So they picked up, now it's over 60,000 connector balls, and they took this data to the leading retailers. And the leading retailers have stopped selling these plastic fireworks as a result of the Litterati community in Holland. Yet one more example of a story of impact. And then finally, in San Francisco, our data was used to help understand what the percentage of cigarette litter was. So the reason the city wanted this data was to create a tax on all cigarette sales. And so long before Litterati existed, they had empowered people with pencils and clipboards. And they came up with a number, and that number led to a 20-cent tax. Well, then the city got sued by the tobacco industry, who claimed that their methodology didn't have any precision, and it certainly wasn't provable. Because everything we do is photograph, there's evidence, our data was used to not only defend, but double that tax, and it generates approximately $4 million a year in annual recurring revenue, all for the city to clean itself up. We've got a bunch of really amazing commercial partners, and 2019 for us was a year of customer discovery. And what we learned was that we're getting quite a bit of traction with schools because they are using Litterati as a STEM-based platform that can help kids become more data literate using mobile phones for a community service program. We're working with a number of NGOs who are already out there cleaning the planet. We're just giving them the ability to do so with more efficiency and put a lot more power to collecting data. We've worked with a number of corporates. We were just a member of the Plug and Play and Alliance to End Plastic Waste Sustainability Accelerator, which has been a tremendous opportunity for us. And finally, cities. And for us, from a business model perspective, cities is really where the long-term opportunity exists. And the reason is simple. They feel the pain. They pay for waste, and they pay for litter prevention. And so we see that as not only a model that repeats, but it's one that's scalable. Our team is located all throughout the world, from Cambridge, Massachusetts to Chicago, Illinois, Chapel Hill, North Carolina, Madrid, Spain, Doha, Qatar. And it's been interesting to build a team that way because this problem is universal, and our team is able to address the problem in different cultures as a result of that. We have raised $1.4 million to date from some leading angel investors in Silicon Valley, as well as the National Science Foundation. And we are closing our seed round now, raising $1 million. And interestingly, the National Science Foundation will put an additional $500,000 in non-dilutive capital upon that raise. We've got a whole planet to clean. And for us, it doesn't matter if you're a student or a scientist. Litterati is a community for everyone. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Jeff. I really appreciate your time. It is an amazing application. I highly recommend it. I have no questions from the audience, but feel free to ask questions. I do have a question on my end. I know, and because I went with Plug and Play, I know that you've been working with a lot of corporations. Do you think you could give an example on how you've been working with corporations and how they can help collaboratively towards the cause?
Sure. So there are some organizations that you can imagine are in the waste industry. And one of the key components of the waste industry beyond collection is identification. And so because we are building machine learning models that get down to the most granular level of data, the brand and the object and the material at the most, we like to say it's a forensic level of analysis, we're able to help them potentially identify really what's coming into the waste stream, because waste streams are becoming contaminated and those companies need them to be pure because that's where value is. And so we're in some discussions with waste companies to help there. We've also worked with a number of corporations around corporate social responsibility, and it starts with employee engagement. At the end of the day, Litterati is really about changing behavior. And one place that corporations are able to help out with that is by getting all of their employees to contribute to a greater good, and then use that as not only a team building exercise, but one that can demonstrate to their customers, their community, their constituents, look at the impact that we're creating.
We do have a few more questions all of a sudden from the audience. Thank you for that. We won't be able to answer all of them right now, so you will be able to type them later. The first one is from Benjamin. Have you worked with brands to develop labeling technology that will enable better, faster, more accurate recognition?
Yeah, that's a great question from Ben. We have. And we right now are working with several organizations about building. So we've built a taxonomy around this object, material, brand, and it all ladders up to different categories, right? And you can imagine that's incredibly complicated when you're dealing with different languages, and what, Danae, what you call a straw might be different than what somebody else calls a straw. And somebody might say this brand is Coke, and somebody else might say this is Coca-Cola. So it's about consistency. One of the biggest issues with data, and Ben, hopefully this dovetails into your question, one of the biggest issues with labeling data is we need to have consistent, comparable data sets, because that gives us baseline metrics. And if we're really going to solve a problem, that level of diagnostics has to occur. We have to understand where we are and how we're comparing a street in Manhattan to one in Manila. And how do you compare a street in Manila that you might have started a campaign with? How do you compare the efficacy of one campaign versus another? Is that street more clean or less clean after we've taken certain action? So labeling and working with third-party labeling organizations is a critical component to creating a consistent, comparable data set.
No, that makes sense. Thank you. We have time for one more question, even though you have a few more. So Tom is asking, what is the motivation for end users? Just like to clean up the planet, yeah.
That is the question that we ask ourselves probably every day. So, yeah. So I'll keep this brief because we could get into a long one about engagement and gamification technique. But today, let's look at it on a continuum. Today, the Litterati community is purely motivated by the intrinsic reward for contributing to a healthy, clean planet. we do have a leaderboard in the application. And so there's a little bit of that competition that goes back and forth. And there are some people who pick up hundreds, even over 1,000 pieces daily. But it's really the intrinsic reward that people are feeling. If you consider that step one on that continuum, step two, we look at a lot to unlock more of a mass market opportunity, right? Because we know some people in the world require a level of incentive, reward, and recognition. And so what we are beginning to experiment with are things like points and badges, right? Does that drive enough motivation to get somebody to pick something up? Where this goes on step three is actual capital. So we believe there's an opportunity, much like Peter discussed, to build a two-sided marketplace. And on the one side, you have cities and NGOs and others who want data and clean communities. And on the other side, so that's the demand side, the demand side. And on the other side, the supply side, you have individuals who are certified and validated literati researchers who are actually beginning to be compensated to do that work. So it's early days for us, but we do see that as an opportunity to increase engagement.
That's amazing. Thank you so much. You do have a few more questions, so if you can type the answers, and we will get back at the end also if there's any answers that couldn't be answered.
Of course.
Questions that couldn't be answered. Thank you so much, Jeff. With that, last but not least, I would like to welcome Gar, who's head chief of staff and sustainability at Rheaply. It's actually quite funny. I reached out to your team from a newsletter from Ubuntu. I saw that you, Gary, the CEO and founder of your company, wrote a great article on GreenBiz about PPE and the marketplace that you created around sharing assets. So Gary, if you would like to introduce yourself and your company, feel free to share your screen as well.
Absolutely. Excellent. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Danae. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever we're finding you. Yeah, so no, and thank you for reaching out. The PPE market has been an incredible experience for us to work on. I'll talk a little bit about that towards the end of my presentation. My journey with Rheaply started maybe only a year, I guess it's almost a year and a half ago now, where we are a younger company. I mean, well, maybe not. I mean, we're about 4 years old now, and we were founded by Dr. Gary Cooper, who discovered an asset problem in his laboratory. Essentially, he was doing research in a well-funded laboratory and wanted to share his assets, his physical things that he had in his lab with other professionals in his environment. Danae, if you give me a thumbs up that you can see my screen, perfect. So Rheaply really started with discovering that he had lots of stuff that he was willing to share, and that it was very easy to exchange items in this typical swap meet fashion. He'd place items on a cart, he'd take it around his hall, his building, and start exchange resources. Well, the idea grew, and how essentially how would we scale this on a digital in a digital way across not just internal to an organization, so connecting users to one another. No surprise, scientists probably aren't talking about the surplus of beakers that they have in their storage cabinet, room, or even in some cases in some universities, an entire warehouse full of surplus assets. So no surprise there that professionals aren't often talking about the things that they're not using. And so what we ended up finding was that there was a huge demand for items to be exchanged between colleagues internal to an organization, which ultimately would save the organization money and then divert waste from landfill. Because what often happens is we've got resources that are away. And that's the whole problem with things, is that we put them away and then we forget about them. And ultimately those assets get devalued, get depreciated, and then they don't have relevance or value to use. And then ultimately comes that painful decision that I think we all face, where we have something and we make that choice to put it in the trash or put it in that dumpster. And it might be painful in the moment, but then again, it goes away. So now we're connecting these systems so that our university clients, our academic partners, our enterprise partners, and our government partners can save money by not double buying assets, can connect users so that users don't have to rely necessarily on procurement teams to get that new thing, that this asset might actually already exist with their colleague who either is willing to give it away, who is willing to sell it to potentially recoup some sort of investment value into their operations, but then also might be willing to rent it. And we work with lots of different partners who spend money, lots of money, on very expensive pieces of equipment or machinery, and then realize I only use this 2 days a week. I might use it all of the hours of those 2 days, but it sits idle for 3 days. And now we've also built in the rental platform where we're allowing colleagues to rent time on other people's equipment, which save more research dollars, which saves more grant funding, and ultimately puts these assets to greater use before they enter some sort of end of life cycle, where then at the end of life cycle, we don't want them to be spatially constrained where they might be sitting in a warehouse, but we'd rather connect an asset to another organization. So in terms of an academic or enterprise partner, or even a government partner, we will connect them to the nonprofits, the high school STEM programs, the you name it, the takers of the organization who are willing to maybe take an older item, but use it in their operations so that it increases the life cycle of that asset. Ultimately, again, diverting waste from landfill. And then we work with a set of disposition partners and an increasing list of disposition partners to make sure that these assets don't just end up sitting in landfill and can actually either be refurbished, remanufactured, or recycled properly. The problem that we were fixing started with that person. We all know that person who knows where the things are in your organization. And we turn to them to say, hey, have you seen this thing? Well, what happens when that person is either busy, frankly, in a day-to-day operation, or leaves the organization? That is a knowledge left from that organization that can't get back. Also spreadsheets. We deal with these every day. Well, when you're dealing with millions of dollars of equipment that might be sitting around and in surplus, spreadsheets don't really help with how things are being utilized and where these items are and if they're available for use. We've seen the use case where things have been sitting around and you walk up to it and there might be a person nearby and you ask, well, whose is this? And that person says, I don't know, it predates me. So ultimately, we're about really figuring out where this item is, where it lives currently, and then where it can be applied next. And that honestly could either be in someone else's operations, that could be for another organization, or again, we could move it down the road and get it recycled so that it's increasing its use through its material functions. Homegrown systems as well can be painful. Often that, it might have one simple function, but it can't integrate well into any upstream or downstream systems. And this could mean lack of communication between teams. We are ultimately trying to solve departmental silos. So again, hurdling that barrier of organizations who might have a procurement team and a surplus team who may not easily communicate with one another because their systems don't communicate together. And then that's where we get to the ERP and AMS systems. So these types of asset management systems that ultimately we believe are outdated. And even as a business model, they focus on a per user license fee, which ultimately limits its applicability to the greater community and ultimately limits the amount of sharing and resource utilization that we're shooting for and that we believe can progress a more sustainable model for both asset use and a circular economy in general. And that's what Rheaply is all about. We're trying to figure out how every organization can better understand their surplus assets and resources, and then help them really hurdle the barriers of time and geography and the mechanics and behavior that go into sharing and exchanging items that may no longer be of use to that organization. And those are the 4 barriers, ultimately, I think, of a circular economy in general. And that's really what we're all about, scaling through technology. We do this, again, through our flagship product, and this is our Asset Exchange Manager. And this is a platform in which we are not only gamifying the scenario in which we are incentivizing the users through monthly giveaways, but also our users have an extreme amount of pride in terms of always knowing where their surplus materials are and having that pain point of throwing them away or having them expire, and now they can give them back to their communities. So that is either an academic scientist who can deliver those antibodies, deliver those chemicals that were set to expire to another researcher so that they can use them. Often these large organizations are buying things at economies of scale that allow them to hit certain price points, fully knowing that they're not going to probably utilize all of their resources. And so this gives them an opportunity to reclaim that value back into the community by spreading that amongst our users. And again, that might be users that are internal to the organization, or in terms of an enterprise client to an academic client, there might be very similar research functions that we can connect these organizations on so that they can share resources or sell resources to one another through our platform. And so we're really all about driving accessibility and visibility to things, to assets. I like to say that our platform is asset agnostic in the way that it doesn't matter what we're looking to share. It doesn't matter what we're trying to get better visibility on. It's all about getting it on the platform, because you just never know who in your organization might need that item, and how we can deliver that item at the right time to the right person, and get that item back in use, or again, continued on its life cycle. We do this by partnering with organizations, and we have a subscription fee model where we have a set monthly fee. We do this because we saw, again, that per user fee as a barrier for increased sharing and increasing our circular economy vision. We've also enabled service fees where we can have a team deployed to an organization to help with either the onboarding process or specific instances in which there might be a high load or a high amount of assets or materials that we're going to be onboarded to the organization. And then we also have a transaction fee where we are going to be putting in our payment processor so that we can help organizations through the payment processing between one another, and then also facilitate that exchange, and then the logistics behind that exchange as well. And that ultimately, this is, I'll use this diagram because I don't have something similar coming up in terms of this circular function above the transaction fee. That ultimately led to our work with the PPE market. So for those of you who maybe aren't familiar, Rheaply partnered with originally the city of Chicago. And the city of Chicago came to us and said, hey, we've seen this work that you all are doing, and we want to know if you could help us in this way. And the particular use case they had is that as we all face reopening in different cities and trying to make sure that we can do this healthily and make sure that we can do this safe for all of the citizens, the city of Chicago wanted to connect their small manufacturers who had pivoted their operations to providing PPE resources like masks, as well as barriers for storefronts, and also operations that had pivoted towards making hand sanitizer. They wanted to connect these local manufacturers to the local small business communities so that upon reopen, the small business communities weren't going to be feeling what might feel like a tax on reopening, as supply would remain probably stable, but demand would spike. Chicago felt that the small business communities would feel that burden on paying that premium for some of these PPE resources, and wanted to create a marketplace in which they capped in terms of a price ceiling and allowed these small businesses to pull items from these small manufacturers for their own operations. I think within the first 36 hours, we had something like 1,200 businesses sign up. And the metrics have gone up even from there. I think we're in the $80,000 of materials exchanged. between the manufacturers and the small businesses. And I'm happy to answer more questions about that coming up as well. Our current, we're a B2B platform. So our current partners range from the pharma to the tech, to the government, to the academic clients. We are continuing to look at new use cases in retail and manufacturing. Because again, it doesn't matter what the thing is. We're all about connecting locations to the resources that those locations have, so that we can increase the use of any of these assets that might be internal to these organizations. A good market validation that we had was with the University of Chicago. Previously, the University of Chicago system was very much a feeding frenzy model, where you might have a lab, a researcher might post something in some complicated listserv, and people may not quite know who got what in a listserv, but the first person to get to the location got the item. What we've established is a marketplace, and this allows people to reserve items, allows a surplus team to claim these items and then get these almost more democratically out to the researchers and faculty and administration that may need them most. Within the first week, and really the first 48 hours at our launch of University of Chicago, we had around, I mean, it was only probably 5 or 6 labs that needed to be purged of their assets, of their things, and that ended up being equivocal to around $1 million, and then 1 ton worth of waste that was immediately redistributed through the community, not only at the University of Chicago, but then also the high school. There were a couple high school and nonprofits that were able to receive these items and use these materials in their own operations. We were recognized recently by Google and the Ellen MacArthur Foundation in a white paper for our work in creating a commercial salvage market in that way, where we can really help connect organizations and provide this digital solution that can scale. This is our team. Yes, we are a family of rock stars. We've got our CEO, Dr. Gary Cooper. We've got our head of product, our CTO as well, who created this product, and we continue to scale these use cases. I'm leading up our growth effort through partnerships and also through sort of our R&D as we continue to discover new use cases. I would like to think that wherever that arrow is pointing, that's not where I'm the head of growth. So ultimately, I'm really just focused on how do we make partnerships with the right people, and then how do we continue to scale our circular economic vision. Our whole goal is to make every resource discoverable and easily transferable, and then also ultimately more valuable to our entire community, and keep those assets in use. I welcome any questions, and thank you all for your time.
Thank you so much, Gar. Thank you so much for the time. I really appreciate it. It's very interesting. I don't think we have any questions right now from the audience. I do have one, and it will be based on sustainability. Yes. How would you say Rheaply is working towards that goal? I know right now you're working in the lab. Is there a way we can expand that and make it more global in other industries?
Yeah, absolutely. So most of the use cases we are currently discussing are outside laboratory functions. So currently we're working on, we are in late stage conversations and have signed, actually, we signed a large American utility and energy company that has a lot of resources that are sitting idle, but they're also looking at connecting locations to surplus materials that might result from either decommissioning projects or reconstruction projects or construction efforts on their operations. So another example is we are in late stage conversations with 2 or 3 retailers, and this was a function that was brought to us where we had a particular retailer come to us and say, hey, we've got these distribution centers, and every time our store managers might go to this distribution center, they discover thousands of dollars worth of materials that they can use in their store infrastructure. So this might be what is known as added stock. So stock that was not used in other efforts of construction or sort of refacing any type of in-store infrastructure, and that this might be something as simple as light fixtures, flooring, retail displays, and these just sit idle without any sense of visibility towards the greater company. So in that use case as well, we took that use case and then went to another retailer who has around 1,300 locations in the United States. And we said, hey, do you guys have a problem where you don't have visibility into other assets that stores might have in their back rooms? And so I actually ended up going and talking to this retailer and asking if there's space being occupied by back rooms that's holding, again, flooring, lighting, any types of shelving units that might be of value to these retailers, but are holding up space in their back room because they're essentially hoarding it, which is taking up space for their merchandise that they're looking to sell. Ultimately, the point here is that stores can exchange items between one another and not necessarily have this hoarding mentality. Stores hoard things because they can't necessarily rely on the immediacy of their procurement teams or their distribution centers. And so essentially, if we start setting up a network between these organizations where they can start to exchange items, that there's an increasing amount of value, not just for the assets that are held in the back room, but also the exchange between the stores and the flow of these materials to make sort of, to ease the operational flow in the back room, essentially. So it's applicable not just on the retail sense, but the utilities, and then the government space as well.
Thank you. That's very useful. Thank you so much. I want to be conscious of the time. It's already a little bit close to 9. And I want to ask one question to everyone to kind of close the remarks. You do have a lot of questions now, Gar, so if you want to take a look, and you can always answer them typing or even later through emails. We'll try to make that happen. So thank you so much, everyone, Peter, Jeff, and Gar, for presenting and pitching today. So I do have one question in general regarding waste today and sustainability. How do you see sustainability grow now and in the future due to this caused by this pandemic, especially now that we cannot use and do really focus on reuse? Is there other ways? Is there a way we can make it safe to everyone to work towards sustainability together? Anyone want to start? Maybe Peter, yeah. You have a global idea.
So and first, then I want to respectfully disagree with you that reuse is not possible. As a matter of fact, I saw a study that came out 2 days ago about reuse, and academics actually looking at reusable bottles and so forth, and saying that it's there's no reason why reusable bottles should not be part of a safe use. On top of that, I've seen, so unfortunately these data, or let's say this is I had a look at confidential data, a global study that was done in terms of post-COVID, what are going to be behaviors of people? And 74% of people around the world said that they will be buying more sustainably. And the vast majority, one of the packages, and this was about food and beverage packaging, one of the packages that sees the biggest growth is reusable packages and refillable packages. So all of a sudden, you have these beverage companies that say, well, you know, we need to go back to the milkman model, right? Back to reusable bottles, and not, you know, look at one-way bottles. So you see big growth of reusable packages, a big growth, at least the claimed growth. But I'd say in general, for waste management, COVID has been a curse in the short term, but a blessing in the long term. And I'm very convinced about that. And I've seen data about it. And it's not just people that are aware. And you see, interestingly, by the way, that the biggest growth in sustainable behavior is in places like China, Brazil, India. India has a massive spike in sustainable behavior, massive. So you see all of these, the global South countries actually really pushing towards more sustainable behavior. On top of that, and we call this the Great Divide right now. Some countries, some governments have clearly decided, and organizations and companies that clearly decided that we cannot go back to normal. We have to go to a new normal. We have to embrace the Green Deal. So you have not just the European Commission and a lot of European companies and CEOs claiming this, but also South Korea with the new government. The first thing they did is, we're going to come out of COVID with a new Green Deal. Other governments, of course, have gone the other way. But the writing is on the wall that the long-term effect of COVID is going to be a positive one for the environment.
Thank you so much for that, and thank you for clarifying that. I completely agree with you. I think it's the way we saw the impact of human behavior in manufacturing has definitely had an impact on human behavior, and I truly think it's going to change the way we see sustainability. Absolutely. Jeff or Gar, do you have anything to say about that as well?
I think Peter is absolutely right. Moments of crises tend to act as accelerants, right? They force us to do things quicker. That might mean, you've always wanted to write a screenplay for a film. There's no reason to wait anymore. You're just going to start doing it. And when it comes to sustainability, I think we're seeing that everywhere. You're seeing people innovate. You're seeing new types of infrastructure come into place. A lot more education is happening. And eventually the health crisis, I think, and I'm hopeful that we will get a handle on. The environmental problem will still be there. We will still have to figure out how to get ourselves out of it, how to put more practical, sustainable solutions in place. And I have all the confidence in the world that that's exactly the road that we're headed on. Have we seen a bit of a hiccup because of this health crisis? Of course, but it has forced us all to come together and get really creative about how we create a much more sustainable, healthy, cleaner planet going forward.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.
Couldn't agree more with what everyone said there. I think we've got 3 companies that are focused on allowing people to take action. And I think that's what this is about, is as we get better visibility into the problems, that solutions, because we're all creative people, solutions will happen.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, everyone. I will stop this conversation here, even though it is a great one and there's a lot of more things to say about it. So hopefully it was useful for everyone here. I would like to end this conversation by thanking the panel, but also people behind the screen from Plug and Play. So thank you. And enjoy the rest of your day, morning or evening, wherever you are. And yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you.
See you soon.
Bye.
Bye.